The last Crown Victoria left Ford's St. Thomas assembly plant in Ontario, with none of the drama its reputation might have suggested. There was no parade of squad cars, no line of taxi drivers leaning on horns, no cinematic farewell for the sedan that had spent 2 decades as America's default authority figure. Inside the plant, the work looked like work always looks. A practiced choreography of hands, hoists, and fixtures, a finished car rolling forward under fluorescent light. But when the final white, body-on-frame sedan cleared the end of the line, a certain kind of American normal ended with it, quietly, the way industrial eras usually do. For most people, the Crown Victoria was never a consumer choice. It was something you encountered, in a rearview mirror, filling it with a blunt black grille, at an airport curb, its trunk swallowing luggage like a basement, at a city intersection, idling with a patience that felt permanent. It became iconic precisely because it was not aspirational. It was a tool, simple, durable, and legible. The car's boxy roofline and broad shoulders left room for people and gear. Its V8 and body-on-frame construction absorbed years of curb strikes and potholes. Mechanics could keep it alive with parts that existed everywhere, and fleet managers could buy it in volume, knowing exactly what it would cost to run. That economy, predictable, repairable, ordinary, is the first thing that disappeared. Ford didn't kill the Crown Victoria because it was unloved. Fleets still wanted it. Taxi operators still trusted it. Police departments still understood it. What changed was the set of forces surrounding it, tightening efficiency requirements, evolving safety expectations, and a market that had been systematically trained, by regulation and by profit incentives, to pay more for taller vehicles classified as trucks. The Crown Vic belonged to an older logic of American cars: low hood, long trunk, low step-in height, excellent outward visibility, and an emphasis on miles per dollar rather than presence. It was also, by modern standards, an expensive vehicle to keep compliant. A full-size, rear-wheel drive V8 sedan is heavy. It struggles on fuel economy. And while the Crown Vic received updates over its long life, it was built on a platform whose basic architecture dated to an earlier period of crash design and emissions packaging. Keeping it viable for the next wave of rules would have required real capital, new engineering, new tooling, new testing, for a product sold largely to cost-sensitive fleets. In the same years that sedans like the Crown Victoria were becoming harder to justify, another category was becoming easier to monetize: light trucks. The distinction goes back to the 1970s, when U.S. fuel economy regulations created separate standards for passenger cars and light trucks. The intent was to protect work vehicles, pickups, and cargo vans from rules designed around family sedans. Over time, however, the truck category expanded in practice to include vehicles that behaved like cars but were marketed and regulated like trucks. That category carried looser fuel economy targets for many years, and just as importantly, it carried pricing power. Taller vehicles could be sold as safer, tougher, and more premium even when they spent their lives on pavement. That pricing power rewrote product plans. For a manufacturer, a fleet sedan tends to be brutally efficient in the worst way. The customer knows exactly what they need and exactly what they'll pay. Margins are thin, options are limited. The sale is negotiated like a bulk commodity purchase. A crossover or SUV, by contrast, can be packaged and priced upward: higher trims, all-wheel drive, technology packages, larger wheels, without the buyer feeling like the vehicle has become irrational. The higher seating position itself becomes a feature people pay for, and once a market is conditioned to equate height with security, the transaction price rises with the ride height. So the Crown Victoria, emblem of utilitarian transport, ran into a new American equation: profitability follows height. The replacement story makes that clear. When Ford exited the Panther platform, the Crown Vic and its siblings, it didn't abandon the fleet market, it redirected it. Police and municipal buyers were offered new Interceptors built from mainstream platforms, including an SUV-based police vehicle that quickly became the dominant choice in many departments. It carried more cargo, offered a higher driving position, and fit the broader industry trend. Fleets, like private consumers, were being moved upward. That shift has consequences that extend far beyond nostalgia for a boxy sedan. One of the Crown Victoria's underrated virtues was visibility. Its hood sat low, and its sightlines were straightforward. Pedestrians and cyclists were easier to see at close range than they are from many modern high-hood vehicles. As the national vehicle fleet has tilted toward taller front ends, researchers and safety organizations have documented a grim parallel trend, pedestrian deaths rising to levels not seen in decades. The physics are part of it. A lower sedan tends to strike a person's legs first, often throwing them onto the hood. A taller vehicle is more likely to hit the torso, where injuries are more frequently fatal. The other part is geometry, what drivers can and cannot see near the front corners of the vehicle, especially at urban speeds in crosswalks and parking lots. The Crown Vic was not a perfect safety instrument. It was a large, heavy vehicle itself, and its very mass could be dangerous. But it came from an era when size didn't automatically mean a tall, blunt front end. The modern transition has not simply made vehicles bigger. It has changed how they occupy space, how they meet a human body, and how they interact with smaller cars. There is also the cost story, the one that rarely appears in advertisements and rarely matters until the first set of replacement tires, the first insurance renewal, the first parking garage scrape. Sedans like the Crown Victoria represented a kind of financial predictability that has become harder to buy. Their wheels and tires were typically smaller and cheaper. Their body damage, while not cheap, was often less complex than on newer vehicles with extensive sensor arrays and expensive lighting assemblies. And because they were ubiquitous, parts and expertise were ubiquitous, too. In fleet terms, they were stable. What the Crown Victoria's end really marks is the end of stability as a product value. The American market did not simply move on from sedans. It was pushed by loopholes, by incentives, by years of marketing that sold verticality as virtue toward vehicles that cost more to buy and frequently more to own. None of this is to suggest that the Crown Vic could have lived forever. Its formula was a product of its time: cheap fuel, a wide-open road system, and a regulatory environment that did not yet demand the same efficiency from every vehicle shape. But its extinction illustrates how quickly a category can vanish when it stops serving the balance sheet. It wasn't that a better sedan arrived. It was that the sedan stopped being the place where manufacturers could reliably earn. In the years since the last Crown Victoria, its afterlife has grown more vivid. Cities sold them at auction and buyers snapped them up. Former detectives, cars, former taxi units, former administrative sedans that still had another 100,000 miles in them. In a used market increasingly dominated by crossovers, the Crown Vic became an artifact of a simpler deal. A lot of car for not much money, built to be fixed instead of replaced, designed to do one thing well: move people, without pretending to conquer anything. That is why its disappearance still matters. The Crown Victoria wasn't just a model. It was a proof that a basic sedan, engineered for durability and priced for fleets, could become national infrastructure. When it left the line for the last time, it wasn't only a car that ended. It was a business case, the idea that boring, competent transportation deserved a permanent place in the American lineup. The market that replaced it is louder and taller and more profitable. It is also less forgiving to pedestrians, to smaller cars, to city streets, and to buyers who would like a large, honest sedan that does not require a luxury price tag to exist. The Crown Victoria didn't die because America stopped needing it. It died because the modern auto industry found something it could sell for more.